What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, back with episode 8 of the Lightin Up Podcast. On today's episode, we have my new friend, Brian Maisenbacher, who is a farmer. And I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys because I learned so much in talking to Brian. I had the opportunity to go up to the farm he was working on, the Bent River Farms in Clarkdale, Arizona. And I learned so much. It was so beautiful, so much fun, and I'm really excited to share this with you guys, like I said. So some of the things we talk about on this episode are how we can heal the soil, and when we heal the soil, we start to heal the water, and how that ties into our own biology. And we talk about some of the myths about organic food. He's got so many tips and tricks about people who are starting new farms, or if you're starting even just a garden in your backyard. I think you're really going to get something out of this episode. He is full of information. He's been in this game for like 10 years or something. So I'm just so thankful that Brian took the time to sit down with me. And to be fully honest, I didn't know shit about farming or gardening before I went and sat down with Brian. And now I feel like I have a little bit of an understanding of how these things work and things that we can do in our own lives, not just in our own farms or in our own gardens, but there's really a lot of good gems in this episode about things we can just incorporate into our own lives and how to be more healthy and vibrant and present in this reality. So I'm really excited, like I said, to share this one with you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't think there's any reason to give the medical legal disclaimer for this episode, but I'm going to say that shit anyway. So just keep in mind with all of these podcasts, all of these episodes, that none of this is meant to constitute legal advice, medical advice, professional advice, any sort of advice. It's really just for entertainment purposes only. And yeah, so before we get into it, I just want to throw out Brian's Instagram. It's at earth_grower, and he's got a lot of awesome content on there. He's got videos. You can shoot him a DM. I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you. He's an awesome resource. He's got some awesome services that you'll get to hear about, from soil analysis to seed preservation to his new app that he's working on, Crop Swap, which will help bring sustainable, healthy foods directly to the consumer from the farm. So this is a really exciting episode. I'm so excited to share it with all of you. I hope that you get something out of it and carry this with you through the rest of your week. And let's grab a candle, grab some sage, Palo Santo, sacred smoke, and let's lighten up together. What's up, fam? It's Calla from Recalibrate, here with my new friend, Brian Maisenbacher. He's a farmer and steward of the land, so today we're going to get into a lot of really cool stuff. But before we do, I just wanted to take a minute and ground into this moment together and just bring it to the here and now with 3 deep breaths together. So we'll breathe in through our nose, or however you want. Just take the deepest breath you've taken all day. And let it out. And again. Last one. As I light this candle, I just want to call upon Brian's highest self, my highest self, the highest self of everyone who's listening, and all of our ancestors, guides, light beings, just anyone, any beings who are here to help us, and really just call on the earth and ask that we can be channels for the earth and communicate the messages of Gaia and help shed light on the ways that she is hurting, so that we can help bring healing to ourselves and healing to her, because we are the same. And so I just ask that Brian and I are able to communicate that, and that we all can get something out of this and carry it with us moving forward. And so it is. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a farmer. Among other things, I've really become more of an agricultural consultant, but I've been farming for a long time. About 10 years now I've been farming, and we're sitting here at one of my most recent projects. This is Bent River Farms, and we're transitioning out of here pretty soon. But what I'm up to is I do soil work, I do soil remediation, we build greenhouses, we set up farms, we set up all the key infrastructure in order to have a farm function the way that it properly should, make it efficient so that the people who are working the farm can have some times for their own personal life, and do it in a way that it's leaving the earth a little bit happier place. So really my mission is to be the best farmer I can myself, but also to work with other farmers, help them become more efficient, more sustainable, more regenerative is really what we're working towards.
That's the part that I was most fascinated about with your work, is the regenerative aspect and how you really just create this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a whole systems approach. So really we're looking at everything. We use holistic management practices to look. We're looking at weeds as indicator species. We're looking at the soil under the microscope. We're using refractometers to look at not only the nutrient content of our crops, but we're looking at the nutrient content of the weeds as well to see which one is getting more nutrients. We're taking a whole systems approach where we're utilizing cover crops, microbial inoculants, various different regenerative techniques to achieve some of these things. And really the ultimate goal is to give more back to the land than we took from it. And when you do that over time, you're making the land better. When you leave, the land is in a better state than when you got there.
Right.
And if all farms could be doing that, we'd be living in a lot different world.
Right, because a lot of farms aren't paying attention to the things that you're paying attention to.
Sure, yeah, and so part of my mission is to work with farmers and kind of elegantly and respectfully relay this message to them, because a lot of farmers, they've been doing it a long time. It's working for them. It's their livelihood. They're stressed out because it's hard to farm, and there's a lot of people going to farms trying to sell them this and that, subpar products,
right.
Chemical-based products, or bug in a jug microbial products that only work for a little while. So the way that I approach farmers, it has to be from their level. It has to be respectfully, like I'm legitimately trying to help you do this better so that you can have a product that you're really proud of. You're leaving your land better than you found it, so that you do have a place for for your kids and that's very nourishing to your community, and to be able to do that in a way that's also efficient, because out on the farm, if you're not working efficiently, you don't have a personal life. You don't have time to spend with your family. You don't have time to do other hobbies. So being very efficient is super important, so that we can maintain inspiration to see the magic in all the other things that we're doing.
Yeah. There's so much I want to talk about. So I feel just to give everyone an idea, so you can come into a farm, or you can come into a plot of land, and really, we talked about earlier, within like 3 years, you can transform that.
Yeah, it takes about 3 years to really take a piece of land that was super in really bad state, and there's a lot of land like that out there that's just really been disrespected, and those tend to be the projects that I like to do the most, because I can see my efforts best. I can collect really meaningful data from that. This is what it looked like before under the microscope. This is what we're working with now. And that's really exciting to me, and I find it to be important work. But doing it in the way that's truly regenerative, no matter what techniques you're using cover cropping, our microbial inoculants make things a little bit faster, but it does take about 3 years to really see a soil that was super degraded turn into something that's really, really great.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It's patience, and
yeah. So I want to get into like the specifics of what cover cropping and all that is, but
Sure.
before we do that, I kind of just want to lay the groundwork for people listening about why this is important. And we had talked ahead of time about, why soil is important, and ultimately why it's important to all of us is because the food that we're eating, if it's not coming from nutrient-dense, diverse, living soil, then, you may have heard there's some fact going around on the internet that like if you were to eat a peach in the 40s or 50s, you would get a certain amount of nutrients, and now it would take like 43 or some amount of peaches to get the same nutrients that was once in one peach. So
Right.
a lot of what you're talking about is the soil, because it's the roots and it's where everything starts. So
Right.
I wonder if you could.
Right. So the soil, there's a lot happening there. There's an abundance of life in the soil, and it's very akin to our microbiome in our stomach. There's an abundance of life in our stomach that makes our entire body function. It affects our mood. It affects every other aspect of our health. And one of the best ways to think about it is that the soil is the stomach of the earth. It's what allows these plants to thrive. It is what's feeding them. And when you look at it from that perspective, you begin to realize that there is a compounding effect with everything that's happening with the soil across the board in our world. So if we're not treating our soil properly and it doesn't have that abundance of life, we're going to be growing subpar crops in there. And we're going to be eroding the soil. And we're losing soil at a very rapid rate here in America and around the world because of the practices that we're using, and we're growing product and crops that are of a low quality. And that's exactly what you're saying. You have to eat more of them to get the same amount of nutrition. And with growing populations in this world, that's not a great solution because we're running out of water as well.
Yeah.
And the more that we take care of our soil, the more water we can retain and replenish our aquifers.
Right.
So there's many things happening in the soil. There's in 1 teaspoon of soil, there's billions or trillions of microbes in that teaspoon of soil, depending on the quality of it, of course. And the more abundance that's there, the higher quality crops we're going to grow. But also we're going to build resilience. So when you have diversity, diversity is power. Diversity is resilience. And the more diversity of plants we can have growing and the more diversity of beneficial microbiology in the soil we have, our crops are going to be more resistant. They're going to be more resistant to disease pressure. They're going to be more resistant to insects. They're going to be more resistant to drought, which is becoming very relevant because we're running out of water in this world. We need to be raising crops that are adapted to our environments, especially our dry environments like Arizona, that can thrive in this soil and not need as much water. And using the correct microbiology can help with that. Also plant breeding plants that are more adapted to being drought tolerant. And when we have plants growing that are healthy, they're photosynthesizing and they're taking some of that energy for themselves, and then they're taking some of that and putting it into the soil. It's called a plant root exudate. So these are enzymes and sugars that are around the roots in the rhizosphere, and that's where the abundance of life is really thriving. So the more plants that we have and the more diversity of them, because each plant is going to release a unique exudate. It's going to release unique enzymes, unique sugars that are feeding more diversity of life. And through doing that, we are sequestering carbon. When the soil is bare and does not have green plants growing in it, all of the carbon in that soil is going into our atmosphere, and it's contributing to climate change.
Right. So that kind of has to do with the cover cropping, right? Like you plant. Can you explain? Is
Sure.
that basically just what you explained, or is it different?
I could dig into it a little bit deeper. So
No
I was talking about plants in general, but one of the regenerative concepts that we use and that other farmers are using is cover cropping. So cover cropping is planting a intentional diversity of different plants that we know what enzymes they're releasing. We know how they affect soil biology. We know how much biomass they can put in to add organic matter to our soil. So when we're doing cover cropping, we're not only feeding the biology in the soil through photosynthesis, we are adding root biomass, which is carbon that's going into the soil. And then when we mow down that cover crop, we want to let our cover crop get as tall as we can. Then we're adding biomass as mulch on the top, a protective layer of the soil, a blanket over it. And cover cropping is very much a gift to the land. It's something we do without expectation of getting a crop out of it. It's really part of our fertility program. It's something that needs to be budgeted in as almost as a fertilizer cost.
So this is what we were talking about before we got started, where you would go to the land and densely plant on purpose a multitude of different plants. And I asked you, I was like, so those crops, because they're densely planted, do you use them? And you said it's a gift to the land, which I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's really the mindset that we have to develop, and more farmers need to be prioritizing this. We need to be putting this into our budget as farmers and allowing the land to receive those gifts, because by doing that, it's going to make our soil better, and then our subsequent crops after our cover crop are going to be of a higher quality. We're going to need less fertilizers. We're going to need less microbial inoculants over time.
Yeah.
And it's a slow man's approach to building organic matter.
Right.
And there's so many other things that are happening. We are, through cover cropping, doing our part to reverse the climate change issues that we're facing,
Right.
because we're sequestering carbon.
Right.
And
so can you explain, so first thing I just want to say, that's so beautiful. I love that, it's really just giving to the land, because then you're creating, and what a beautiful way to start your farm, just by giving this offering. That's going to bring abundance no matter how you look at it. But so I love what you were explaining about the sequestering the carbon, because can you explain the science of that?
Yeah, so there's a carbon cycle happening all around us, and when carbon doesn't have the ability to be stored in the soil, when the soil is bare, the carbon is going to be released into the atmosphere. And the best way to pull carbon into our soil is to have green plants growing. Plants absorb CO2 and turn it into oxygen, and they're storing that carbon in the soil.
Rather than it being, if you didn't have those plants, the carbon would just go.
Yes.
And that's what's causing
And then
issues.
On top of it, when the soil is bare, not only is it releasing to the atmosphere the carbon, then the rest of the topsoil that is there and stored in the soil is eroding away with the wind and with water, and we're drastically eroding our soil more and more every year because of the techniques that we're using on farms.
And this ties back to water too, because it also, by not having dense nutrient living alive soil, the water can't permeate as well, right, and go back into the
So when you have soil that's super eroded and compacted, what will happen is the water will run off over the top of it. It won't absorb in properly. The soil will become hydrophobic, and the soil that does sink in will become anaerobic on the hard pan underneath. And
what does anaerobic mean?
Anaerobic means lack of oxygen. So our soil is living and breathing, much like we are. So when we're adding organic matter, and that's what one of our core focuses with cover cropping is building organic matter, we're allowing the soil to be much like a sponge. Like some people describe it, like really good soil, as like a chocolate cake, or something along those lines. Really dark, rich color, humic color, and when you can have soil like that, it absorbs the water better, and then it releases some of it. You don't want soil that's necessarily holding on to too much water or not enough. So building the soil structure, which is really more involved with chemistry than biology, it has to do with both of them. Like as a farmer, there's different camps in farming. Some people are full on focus on minerals, just minerals. That's going to fix everything. Other people, no, biology, forget about the minerals, don't look at them. We need to be looking at both.
Right.
We need to be looking at both because we need to broaden our understanding. As much as we think and the experts think that we understand this stuff, we're learning more and more every day. We've barely scratched the surface of our understanding of this stuff. So we need to be looking at all angles. And because the chemistry, if it's not in the right state and the soil is super compacted, which very much has to do with calcium and chemistry, then it doesn't have the right stage for that biology to dance and play and do its thing. And so that's really what we're looking at is the structure there to take this life and take care of it. And some of the best ways of doing that are with cover cropping, using compost teas, different microbial and fungal inoculants that we can add to the soil to jumpstart it. It's much like when our gut gets messed up, we take a probiotic or we take a prebiotic, something like that. That's very much what we're doing. We're making these probiotics and allowing nature to make them for us, utilizing photosynthesis so that we can get that thing jump started and get it back to a healthy place again.
Right. It's like when you told me about the teas, I just picture how, Earth is sick, like she's hurting, and what a better way to tend for her than to, give her tea.
Yeah.
You're literally giving the earth a tea. It's so beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different teas and inoculants and ferments that are for different things. And there's conflicting viewpoints in that. Within the regenerative world, there's several different camps that believe different things and bring a lot of ego with that, and create this paradigm where there's right and wrong. I don't subscribe to that. I like to look at everything, understand. I like to see the results myself. I don't blindly believe things. So I do side-by-side studies. I very much take a scientific approach to everything that I do, using real scientific method. But that being said, the teas have many beneficial effects, and there's different types of teas that you can make. So there's aerobic teas having oxygen, ones that are aerated using a fish tank bubbler or more sophisticated bubblers to propagate life that loves aeration, right? But then there's other anaerobic fermentations that are without oxygen, and they both have their place. There is a middle ground there, and it takes a deep understanding of what's really happening with the soil to choose which one to use and where. So there is countless teas that you can make out of many different materials. Some of the techniques that I use are Korean natural farming, and I also use some jadam techniques. I do use aerated teas similar to soil food web style teas, and I have some of my own recipes as well. And I take a broad approach to it, but I don't subscribe to just one as a catch-all of this is going to fix all our problems. One may be relevant here and not so relevant on another farm. So it's very contextual. But in essence, when we're making fermentations, we are either utilizing sugar to release some of these enzymes and stuff from the plant material and harness those to use in the garden, or we're using microbiology to break down plant material, or we're using high quality compost or boutique style compost. Boutique compost is very, it's exactly how it sounds. It's small batch. It has a very specific purpose behind it, and so it really depends on the context of the farm. It depends on the context of the crop. Some crops are looking for different nutrient profile depending on what they are, and that also depends on the life cycle of the plant. So where are they in their stage of growth? They're going to need different nutrients based on that nutritive cycle. So it requires a pretty broad understanding of not only the soil but the plant that you're trying to feed. What goals am I trying to achieve? there's teas that I can use that help to break up compaction if I'm dealing with compacted soil. Maybe I don't need that one if it's already pretty good soil. You know, then it's based off what am I seeing under the microscope? You know, is there enough beneficial fungi there?
Right.
If not, you know, those are things that I need to add in.
Right.
Because bacteria is very opportunistic. Bacteria shows up no matter what. It's there. It's all over us right now. But fungi, on the other hand, that takes a little bit more intention. The stage has to be proper for fungi to thrive. And by adding fungi, setting the stage properly first, then adding fungi through these inoculants, then all of the other good guys are going to follow suit. So part of our approach is we are very fungally focused because that's harder to get than the bacteria. The bacteria are going to show up regardless.
Yeah.
But adding beneficial yeast and beneficial fungi is what's going to really jumpstart it. And fungi has the ability to form soil aggregates. So
what are soil aggregates?
So soil aggregates are when you it's the smallest unit of measure that we measure soil in. So generally it's a little piece of soil that's roughly about the size of a pea.
Okay.
And if you have soil that does not form aggregates and just becomes dust, you've got problems. There's issues with your soil structure. So soil that's properly structured will form aggregates, and it forms for many reasons. So when the biology in the soil is down there doing its thing, they're living much like we are. They're having sex, they're pooping, they're eating, they're killing each other. You know, there's a lot happening down there, and a lot of what happens is the nutrients become available in the soil from those processes. So there may be nutrients there that were not available until a microbe ate it and pooped it out, and now the plant can get it.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
And all of those different things form glues, glomalin, different sugars and enzymes hold the soil structure together. And fungi does that as well. It forms a dense network and webbing within the soil that holds it together so that it can hold moisture, so that it can form pockets for other life to thrive in there. And so that's what soil aggregation is when you have a healthy system happening. Soil will form in a way that there are those little pockets in there where life can thrive. Those are like the little apartments for the microbes.
Yeah. So you take what I think is cool about you is you take a super holistic, I called you like the naturopathic farmer. You're like a holistic naturopath farmer. And you also, so I think in mainstream farms, a lot of the time, you know, you have these problems with the soil and they're just like, oh, well, let me just put all these fertilizers and chemicals and shit in the soil. And you, rather than doing that, take this holistic approach, and on top of that, you make a lot of your own, you know, teas and tonics and whatever fertilizers and things you give to the earth. And so you're using earth to heal earth.
Yes. And when you do it that way, when you make a lot of your own stuff, farms, you know, you're trying to rub 2 pennies together, make $1.
Yeah.
So when you're making some of your own stuff, not only is it going to work better, it's going to be cheaper, and you're utilizing things that are from your environment. So say you can purchase microbial inoculants all day long, but they're made in a lab, and they're not necessarily made in your environment. So when we're culturing things that are from our native bioregion, the place where you are farming, those microbes are more likely, when you apply them to your soil, to live and thrive and take hold. And when you purchase microbial inoculants, some of them are really good, some of them definitely work, but a good percentage of that biology, once it hits your soil, is not going to thrive for the long term. It's not going to set up shop and propagate itself right there.
Right.
Which is part of what regenerative is. So like, not only are we trying to be regenerative, we're trying to encourage the biology to be regenerative and regenerate itself and propagate itself and grow.
Right.
And when we use the practices where we're giving more back to the land, then that action starts happening down there. And that's really what we're working towards.
And then you have a whole system that it's like you do all this work up front And not that it's not work the whole time, but you really set yourself up for a thriving ecosystem.
Definitely, and it takes time to do that. It takes patience, and you really have to be paying attention to what's going on.
Right.
And I try to do that in every way that I can. I'm doing testing where I'm looking at soil structure, but I'm also looking at soil biology, and when I work with big farms, we do send off tests for mineral testing and cation exchange and this type of information, because when you're dealing with someone's livelihood and they really genuinely want to do it the right way, because a real farm has the ability to make the world a better place. It has the ability to nourish our communities and our earth. So when someone wants to achieve that and they're counting on this for their livelihood, we need to be looking at every bit of information that we possibly can. So there's types of testing that I have the ability to do, and then there's testing that has more sophisticated equipment. And I'm not necessarily, usually with those tests they give a bunch of fertilizer recommendations and that kind of stuff, and I'm not necessarily utilizing that as my mode of management, but I'm using it as a reference point to better understand what's happening there.
Right. To paint a full picture of what's going on.
Yeah, and that I find that to be the best approach.
Yeah.
And then pairing that with actually looking at the plants. Using a refractometer, I'm able to see the amount of dissolved solids that's in the plant, and with some level of accuracy say how nutrient dense this crop is. Are my weeds more nutrient dense than my crop is? That's an important metric to be able to make decisions.
Right.
And with even more advanced testing for more high value crops, cannabis and all these other crops, it becomes relevant to actually send off for a more sophisticated tissue sample to tell me exactly what's in the plant.
Right.
And I'm not set up for that, but for the right crops, it's worthy of doing that to get a broader picture.
So these are some of the services you offer are consulting and the soil analysis. So if someone wanted to start I have some friends who are wanting to buy land, for example, or have bought land, and they want to create a sustainable farm to live off of. Just for themselves even. So they could send in a soil sample to you and get a analysis. Definitely.
So my analysis is very focused on soil structure and microbiology. And I also look at pH and electrical conductivity of the soil, because that will tell me different things. And from there I'll make a few recommendations, but I won't make recommendations without actually speaking to the farmer. I need to know context.
Right.
I need to know what you're really trying to achieve. I'm not just going to tell you something because I think that I know everything. And I want to help make decisions within the context of your farm, your goals, and your budget. Those are important factors. So I'm not just going to say, do this, 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 and this, and maybe you don't have the money to do that. Maybe you don't have the time to do that. So it's very important when I do soil analysis is to, if it's being mailed to me, we need to have some phone conversations. Send me as much information as you can. Take pictures of your farm. Tell me what you're up to.
Well, what kind of holistic farmer would you be if you didn't do that?
And I'm going to get an even better idea of what's going on when I get boots on the ground. I'm on the farm looking at things myself.
Yeah.
And generally, I definitely encourage different farms to, if I can't come on site, to tell me the kind of weeds that they're seeing. And if you don't know what they are, take pictures of them and send them to me. I'll identify them.
Right, because the weeds you were saying are communicating what could be going on in the soil.
Weeds are indicators of what's happening. Some of them are releasing nutrients that are in excess. Some of them are remediating toxic things that are in the soil. The nastier the weeds are, your thistles and your thorny stuff, generally those plants are remediating the soil. There's something bad in there. And there's a reason that we see those things growing, and every single one of these weeds, they have a story to tell us. They're giving us valuable information about what's happening with our land, and those are things that we need to be listening to.
Right.
We can make decisions based off that stuff that are way more accurate than sending something off to a lab to someone who's never even spoke to you or stepped foot on your land.
Right.
And so I find that the mineral analysis is valuable, and there's an ability to make some decisions based off of that, but that's just one piece. It's not a holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those labs, not all of them, they're closely tied with fertilizer companies, and they want to sell fertilizer.
Yeah.
And I will make things for you, but I want to teach you how to fish. I'm going to show you how to make this stuff yourself.
Right.
I may make it for you at first to get the ball rolling, but I don't have an interest in selling products. I provide a service.
Yeah.
And if we can develop the mindset that's proper for you to achieve the goals on your farm, that's really what I am helping with, is building a mindset, painting a picture of what's really happening so that you can do these things on your own. I don't want people to be dependent on me.
Right.
I want you to be able to do this yourself, because I only have so much time and there's more people that I need to help.
Yeah. And that's the beauty. I mean, I believe in any true healer, teacher, really that's the goal, is to empower people to empower themselves.
Definitely.
So what would you say if you had a piece of advice for, people, like, at least especially with my listeners, there's a lot of people who are, worried about the way the world is turning and want to eventually be sustainable and grow their own food and stuff like that. So what, I know you've mentioned like start with radishes because they grow so easy, but just any advice you have for people headed that direction?
Sure. So having a garden is a beautiful thing. There's a lot of gifts to receive there. And, what I encourage people to do when they're first starting a garden or a farm, you need to ask yourself what your goals are. What are you really trying to achieve by doing this? And then it can help you to make a better plan on how to achieve those goals. And so before you even make the garden or go start getting materials or anything like that, you have to ask yourself that question: what am I really trying to achieve? What do I really want out of this? Do I want this to just be for my family? Do I want this to be for my community? Do I, am I a chef? What is it that I'm really trying to do here? Because we tend to, as people, we find out about things that are going on in the world, and we attach all of this ideology around the decisions that we're making, but they're not necessarily pragmatic or realistic decisions, so we want to ask ourselves those things so that we can, when we do actually build our garden or build our farm, that we're doing it from the right place, and that we have the right mindset, and that we are doing it in a way that's going to leave our small plot a little bit better, that we're going to grow something that's of a really high quality to give to our kids or share with our family. And so understanding those key pieces, that's what I recommend at the beginning, and then next you want to source really good seeds. Good seeds are going to produce plants that have strong genetics, and they're going to be more nutrient dense. And generally, if you can find more rare seeds, it's going to be more fun, especially if you're doing it with kids or things like that. Like, you want to grow stuff that's fun. You want to grow something that you can't get at the store, something that's unique, and that's going to maintain your excitement about it. And then, but my number one thing when you're starting a garden or a farm or whatever it may be that you're doing, your soil's your number one priority. Your soil and good quality seeds, and making sure that your water is of a good quality. So if you're in the city, you're going to want to filter your water. There's chlorine in it. There's different ways you can do that. You can get more sophisticated filters. You can let it sit out 24 hours, and the chlorine will evaporate.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that, if it's a small garden, you could do that. You could put it in buckets and you let it evaporate, and then that's very relevant for when you're making teas as well. You don't want to use water that's going to sterilize your biology. So those are key things to think about. And then, where am I getting my materials? We want to the stuff that's from the Home Depot and all that kind of stuff, like, you can make it work. It's not the best.
Right.
Usually it's from questionable sources, and it's supporting a machine that's not within the context of the goals that you're probably trying to achieve.
Right.
So when you can source things locally from reputable people or make some stuff yourself, that's the best. Composting in your own home so that you can have something that's of high quality, and taking it seriously, because composting is an art. It's much like making bread. It's not throwing things in a pile and letting it rot. That can work, but you're going to produce a subpar product. When you look at that under the microscope, it's going to be bacterially dominated, and it's not going to necessarily be good bacteria. So doing it with the intention, and much like when you make a loaf of sourdough bread, you need sourdough starter to make that. So when you're making a good compost, you need to have a good quality inoculum to start the compost. Or similar to when you make kombucha. When you make kombucha, you have to save part of that mother culture for your next batch. So you don't want to be using all of your compost. You want to be saving some to mix back in. Worm bins are great things as well. Worm castings are the most available plant food that there is. So you can take a high quality worm casting, and it's readily available to the plant, and if it's fresh, it's abundant with life. Stuff that we buy from the store, the life's not really there. It's still good plant food. But doing these things yourself, and then when you really get going and you've sourced good quality seeds that are heirloom, you can save those yourself. And that builds resilience, that builds power. It helps to achieve the resilience and the self-sufficiency that most people are working towards when they want to build their garden. So saving your own seed, making sure that your soil is really well taken care of so that you can get stuff that's healthy for your family. Making some of your own inputs so it's not costing you a bunch of money to do this, and you're not supporting the big box store that's going the other direction. And
away from the earth. We're going back to the earth.
So those are key things to think about when you're wanting to build a garden. But also, how much time do I feasibly want to put into this? You got to ask yourself that question too, because if you bite off more than you can chew and then it's not doing that great, then you feel disheartened. You feel like you've failed, and then you don't like gardening anymore, and then maybe you don't do it anymore. So biting off what you can feasibly do well is important, so that you will maintain it for the long term.
Yeah.
And then if we're taking it really seriously and want to progressively get better at gardening over time, we need to be keeping garden journals. You need to be taking notes on everything that you're doing. So when you do something right, you can remember it. And when you do something wrong, you can remember that too. As there's too many things happening in life. And a soil environment or a garden is very dynamic. And we go do some wild hair thing that we read on the internet, and it messed our garden up, and we didn't take note of that. We might not know what's actually going wrong, especially if you're just starting out. So taking good notes, getting good quality seed, having good quality water, and taking care of your soil. And then, if you're growing a big abundant garden, then having a plan on how to deal with it. You don't want it to all go to waste. Are you set up for canning? Do you have a big enough fridge to store this stuff? What's your plan with it? Because a lot of the time, if you're using the right techniques and your soil's really good and you had good seed and you did everything right, you're going to have a lot of stuff, and you're going to need to know what to do with it. You don't want to waste it.
Don't want to waste it. Cause
we put all that effort into it, and it could be something that's nourishing for your community or for your family. So we want to take these things seriously and make strategic and pragmatic plans about how we do these things, because they're very important. We don't want to just go about them like, whatever, I'm just going to go get the stuff from the box store and I'm going to buy the plant that they grew for me that has Nicotinoids on it, and I'm just going to be lazy because I want to have a garden.
What are neonicotinoids?
They're a neurotoxin that's
Oh.
used. It's a systemic pesticide that they spray on most of the nursery plants.
Great.
And so
Wonderful.
buying plants from growing your own plants is also important. So having a plan of like, how am I going to produce seedlings in a meaningful way? Whether it's an indoor environment or it's in domes with a mat underneath or inside your greenhouse or whatever it may be, having a meaningful way to do that so that we're not having to lean on buying those plants from the store that are guaranteed sprayed with pesticides, grown with low quality seed, grown in a soil that has synthetic fertilizers in it. You know, those are not what we want to be eating. You know, that it's a decent entry point, you know, if you have no other option.
Right.
But really, we need to be stepping back from that convenience mentality.
Right.
We need to take more ownership of what we're doing and take it seriously, because we're living in a world where very few people hold barely anything sacred or take it as seriously as it really is. And when we put that intention and care into it, our end result is going to be better for us, for the earth, for our family, for our community, across the board.
Yeah.
And it's mindfulness is really what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and patience and love and care. And we talked earlier before we started about how, you know, we're not separate from the earth. Like, when the earth is hurting, we are hurting. Like, when her stomach is hurting, it's impacting the food that's feeding our stomachs. We are the earth. So would you know, if you're not feeding yourself these shortcuts, or you're not going to the drive-through to get food, like, it's kind of like the same thing.
Oh, definitely.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be taking shortcuts with our health. We don't need to be taking shortcuts with the health of the earth.
Yeah.
Because we are so distracted as a human race with so many things that aren't important at all that we overlook things that are right in front of us.
Right.
It's all right here. It's right in front of us. We know it in our spirit. We know it, but we ignore it. And because we have a convenience, instant satisfaction culture where we want things fast, we want them now, we don't want to work for them. And that culture is perpetuating, but we need to be working. We need to be doing good work that feels good to us, that is taking care of our spirit, so that we can maintain the inspiration to inspire others or to do meaningful work that's actually going to make a difference. Because so often we're doing work that doesn't actually play into making any of this better. You know, it's, if anything, we may be doing work that's making it worse, you know, in exchange for money, so we can have things that are not necessarily that important. We can't take any of this with us. We're going back to the earth one of these days. And you can't take your car, you can't take your house, you're not taking any of it with you. No. It's great to be comfortable, and if you've got the means to be comfortable, do it. But we need to be paying more attention to these things, not just for us as adults. This is for our children. It's more important for them than anything. Our education system needs to be talking about these things more. We need to be teaching our kids. They need to be in the garden, understanding and tasting this stuff, so that when they grow up, this is more important to them than it was to us. And so that we can create a regenerative mindset in the world. To make this place better, because it's all that we've got. Yeah,
if your boat can't float on a earth that doesn't exist, you know, like if we don't have water or food or any of these things, then none of that shit matters anyway. And we're at a turning point, really. Like, now's the time to start taking care of the earth.
It's the time. It's been the time.
It's been the time.
Yesterday was the time. You know, 10 years ago was the time.
More than that.
100 years ago. You know, but we, as the human race, a lot of the time we're learning things the hard way. We're reactive. We get sick, we take medicine rather than trying to stay healthy. You know, like, it's very much an entrenched and ingrained mindset within us to react to things rather than being preventative.
Or to seek to understand, why is this showing up? Like the weeds or the illness in yourself or whatever it is, why is this coming up? It's communicating something to me.
Definitely.
Rather than just like, oh, yank it out, put the fertilizer, kill it, take the drug. It's the same.
We need to be listening to the earth very similar to a way that we would want to listen to our bodies. Yes. Our bodies are telling us things all the time, and we dumb it down by, you know, alcohol and drugs and whatever it is that we may be doing to not feel that. But our bodies are telling us things all the time because we're not as healthy as we could be. Even all of us that are trying our best to buy organic from the store and all these kinds of things, it's a farce. The organic food from the store, if you think that doesn't have pesticides on it, you're kidding yourself. They're organic pesticides. They're approved pesticides to be sprayed in organic, and they weren't necessarily grown in soil that's thriving.
Yeah.
You're allowed to till and degrade your soil all you want in organic. No one stops them from doing it.
So do you think there's a point in buying organic?
There is. There's a point in it because there's some farms that are doing it right and we want to support them.
Right.
But the main thing in organic, those organic pesticides and herbicides and all that kind of stuff, they're a hell of a lot better than the stuff they're using in conventional.
Okay.
And they are, if you buy organic, you can trust to a degree that there's probably not that much glyphosate on it. You know, like there may be some, you know, it's in our water table, it's showing up in people's bodies, but thankfully, like, there's finally some things happening in regard to that. They're outlawing it. But it's taken a long time for it to get to that point. And the stuff that there's key things that you really want to buy organic, for sure. There's some that it's maybe less important, but we really shouldn't be consuming any conventional food that has corn, cottonseed oil, soy, or even wheat, for that matter. Yeah. All of the gluten intolerance stuff that we're dealing with has nothing to do with gluten. It has to do with low quality gluten.
Yeah.
There's a big heritage grain movement happening where people are growing old world grains organically or even regeneratively, and people who have gluten intolerance can eat that bread and not get sick.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it's the way that we're growing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the issue. That's why everyone's getting sick. People can't drink milk anymore because of the way we raise the cows.
Right.
It's not as though it's bad. Milk could be really good if it was done the right way.
As with everything, factory farming, factory, it's really just, in my opinion, this like detachment from the earth. We're just so focused on this process as much as possible that the quality has just gone to shit. And in the process, the earth has gone to shit, the animals are going to shit, and we're going to shit. So it's like, we just need to bring the awareness, like you said, just presence and awareness back to what we're doing, and look at the longevity of our practices.
Yeah, I mean, I find that utilizing these techniques as best that we can when people are inspired to do the work, that's part of the solution. But really, like, very focusing on the kids is a big part of it. Allowing kids to understand being mindful, being mindful of what they do and how they live their lives. Having them understand some of how the natural processes of the earth work. Like, get them inspired to understand this as a fundamental truth, not as something that's like you have to search for. No. It should be readily available for everyone, especially children.
Right.
And there's people out there, they're making children's books about some of this stuff, and and as I'm hopeful that as schools and stuff change and progress in this world that we're living in, that maybe things are coaxed in that way.
Right.
But it's hard to know.
Yeah.
But that's my hope.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about that you're doing, which is really cool, and it kind of falls in line with the organic and inorganic food, is the crop swap app that you're working on. And can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so I'm affiliated with a up-and-coming startup that's called Crop Swap. And Crop Swap is a direct sales platform where, as a customer, you can go onto this platform and there will be a vetted list of farmers that are utilizing the proper practices. We've confirmed that their food is of a high quality, and then you can access it and have it delivered right to your door. And it's very much on a community-based thing. So we're starting in California, and we're launching there, and then we're going to go nationwide with this. And that's really my next big project that we're working on, is focused on confirming that farms are doing it properly, but then also creating access and creating a
network,
easy platform for people to buy it on that network. And the way that the world is going right now, people buy stuff online. It's what it is. It's not going away, so we find that to be able to streamline this and create access to people, that this platform is very important. And we have very much a mission-driven mindset behind it, that we want to do this so we can create access, and then we can lift up farmers that are really doing it properly and drive traffic to them and make their lives a little bit easier.
Right.
And those are really the goals that we're trying to achieve. And through doing that, people may be a little bit healthier. Maybe the planet's a little happier.
Yeah, it's a win-win for both, because you're encouraging these sustainable, regenerative farming practices that are creating high-quality foods, and you're also giving access to the people for that. Because, for me, for example, like, I go to the freaking grocery store, sometimes the farmer's market if I'm feeling fancy, but really having access to that and making it more of the norm to be able to get those high quality foods, I think is really important.
Right, and it provides education, because people who go on the platform, they're like, oh, I didn't realize like how important this is, that like, oh, this farm's really taking care of the soil the right way. Maybe I dig into that a little deeper. Maybe I want to understand a little bit more, and it can be, tasting a really high quality food is the best catalyst for someone to actually dig deeper into what we're really doing.
Right.
Once they taste and they realize,
taste the difference.
It's so much different than something that's of low quality. The flavor is going to be better, and we feel our bodies receiving more nutrients from it, and that resonates with us and is a source of inspiration for people to better understand how that's achieved.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that you're transitioning into this new phase of your life, and I caught you here on some of the last times here at this farm for now.
Yeah, and we'll be working with a lot of other farms. I'm still doing my consulting, and we're going to put a lot of effort into making Crop Swap be the real deal.
Yeah.
We're going to put a lot of effort into it.
So you can find Brian, like he said, he does consulting, and his page is awesome. He has a lot of resources, a cool website, some other podcasts you could check out that he's been on at Earth_Grower.
Earth_Grower, or you can hit up earthgrowerllc.com if you're not on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, but I'm not super active on there. But your best bet is probably if you really want to see what we're up to, probably go on to Instagram or check out the website. You can reach out to me. My email's on there. Get back to you as soon as I can.
Yeah, definitely check Brian out. But before we get out of here, would you mind pulling a card for the...
Sure.
This is the shamanic medicine deck. I knew he would pick this one of the cards. So you can just... I'm pretty fluid with how I do it. You can just pull the top one. You could open it up, pull the middle one. You can shuffle. You can... There we go.
Okay. Soul retrieval.
Soul retrieval, reclamation. When I read that, I think of like reclaiming the land and reclaiming we are the earth.
Yeah.
Healing ourselves. Do you have any thoughts on soul retrieval?
Yeah, I mean, I think the soul connection that we feel with one another, and we can notice that. You can tell when someone's looking at you and they're on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
We notice these things, and it's a subtle energy that we're working with, but if we could recognize the earth just the same way that we recognize and see one another, you know, see the light that we see within one another within the earth, and allow that to reflect back to us, then life becomes a lot more meaningful.
Yeah, yeah.
You see beauty everywhere, and I wish that for everyone.
Yeah, and just like we like to be seen, the earth loves to be seen and appreciated too, you know.
Yeah.
She can feel that. And I also just wanted to add, it just reminded me, he plays music for his plants. The little, like, after they're, you know, when they're just growing up from the seeds, there's music playing.
Yeah, there's a lot of research to suggest that it's very beneficial to play music. They also really resonate to the human voice.
Yeah.
So inside our indoor propagation room, I play NPR, not that I really subscribe to everything that's happening on that, but I play it because portion of the day they get classical music, and then portions of the day they actually hear the human voice. And when I'm not there to be with them.
Yeah.
And the plants really do respond to that.
Yeah. So you talk to your plants?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're alive just like we are.
Yeah. They love that. And I mean, there's studies about that too, so that's really beautiful. Well, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you guys got something out of it. And definitely check out Brian Earth_grower on Instagram. And if you got some gardening questions, or if you're a farmer, I'm sure he'd love to connect with you.
I like to talk to farmers. You know.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, I just want to thank Brian one more time again so much for taking the time to sit down with me. That was such a powerful and enlightening conversation, and I'm so excited to see the things that he does moving forward. So be sure you check him out on Instagram. Again, his handle is @earth_grower, and send him a DM if you have questions. Check out his services. He's an awesome guy, as you can tell, such a kind heart. Definitely a steward of the land, of the earth, and I'm just so grateful for his time. So thank you to all of you for tuning in. As always, I'm so appreciative of you. I love you so much. I hope that you can carry this with you through the remainder of your week and shed light on those that you meet. I love you.
Hazy funk past J's and face of blunt ashtrays and skate with punk kids. I still chase the sun bad days. I'm lacing up half cabs and shake John spliffs. Whatever happened to rap, it should rest in peace to Mac, and I'm here to raise it from the dead. Cause drugs ain't cool, kid, plug you with that new shit. Turn water to wine and break bread. And if I said this all the future, would you trust I told the truth, or would you run away and tell my whole fan base? Cause sooner or later, kid, they'll take your human nature and they'll burn you at the stakes while the band plays. So, in the last words, better speak up now. I said, why do birds sing? What's a king without a crown? They all stood in silence while they listened to the sound of a madman reason with the demons he found. You can't lock up ideas, we don't even exist. I just live through the speakers and the beats that we kick. Is this forbidden fruit from the Garden of Eden? Is it freedom of speech, or am I speaking for freedom?